All right, so now let's talk a little bit more about protein. Protein is the building block of every part of your body. And so all of the tissue, the muscle, the ligaments, the bones, the tendons, the organs, they are created based off of proteins. Now, what are proteins? Proteins are structures that are composed of amino acids. And these are small compounds, and there's 20 different types that the body uses like Legos. 9 of these are considered essential, which means your body has to get them from an outside source. That means exogenously. That means in your diet or what you're eating. Now, the other 11 are considered non-essential. That doesn't mean they're not important, but it does mean that your body can make them internally on its own merit. Now, if we don't get enough protein, we can have, let's say, metabolic disorders and things that our body stops functioning well. But thankfully, in first world countries, this really isn't a problem. So you really don't see a protein deficiency that much. However, that doesn't necessarily mean you're operating at an ideal level. For example, the RDI for adults is just near 0.4 grams of protein per pound body weight. But that's probably not going to be an ideal place. That's as much as you need to survive and not be deficient, but that's not as much as you need to thrive. Protein is incredibly important for people that are developing and growing, athletes, and people who are trying to gain muscle, because this protein becomes the building block for putting on muscle and building new tissue. And if we're trying to expand and grow our body, we have to have this stuff. Now, it's also important for people who are trying to lose weight and lean out for a few reasons. One, it has a higher level of satiety, meaning that it's going to fill you up and you're going to feel more full after eating let's say a chicken breast than you would potentially some popcorn. Now, the other side is that protein doesn't really get used for energy well. It's either excreted in the urine or it's used for building, but it's not really stored for energy. So you're rarely going to hold onto protein or amino acids to store for extra energy. It can be used for energy, but it's a pretty inefficient process, and protein takes a lot of energy to break down relative to carbohydrates and fats. So for these reasons, it's key to build your diet and overall macronutrient allotment around protein. As a general recommendation, I always start and just tell everybody to go for 1 gram of protein per pound body weight. Now, for athletes and people trying to gain muscle, we'll bump that up to 1.3 and even 1.5 to be safe. And for people trying to lose weight, it can be a great way to increase and go for a higher protein diet anyways, because the goal is not to store extra weight. The goal is to use what we have and be in a deficit so that we're using our body's own fat stores. So the most bioavailable sources of protein are going to be meats, eggs, dairies, nuts, and seeds. But that doesn't mean you can't get protein from vegetables like spinach and broccoli. The issue is that you just have to get a larger amount of those to get the same amount because it's not all as readily available. One of the benefits of consuming eggs, dairy, and meat is that the animals have already condensed that, let's say, more nutrient sparse source like the grass and the vegetables into higher, more energy concentrated forms of fuel for our body. But that isn't to say that you can't be vegetarian or vegan and get the required nutrients. You just have to be more mindful about that and understand that when you take something out of your diet, you have to replace that and make sure you're getting the required elements. So when you're building your diet, make sure you start with protein. Having a dense energy source of protein in each meal, whether that's dairy, whether that's meat or vegetables, is a great place to start because you're going to make sure you're getting that. And that's incredibly important for athletes and people trying to put on muscle. So if you're a 150-pound person who's an athlete or someone looking to gain muscle, the bare minimum protein you want to have is 150 grams of protein per day. Obviously, you can increase that to 200 grams of protein per day to be safe, but you just take that total number of protein and divide it by the total number of meals you're having. So if you're having 200 grams of protein a day and you're having 3 meals, that's just over 65 grams of protein per meal. You can obviously supplement with things like protein powders and protein shakes or having meals around like smaller snacks. They're going to be higher in protein to help you get to that point. But building your diet based off of getting the right amount of protein is going to be a great place to start.